One of my favorite parts of website design and development is the part where actually things start coming together and looking like what my original design was. So we saw in the last lesson how easily we could create these container areas and move them around the page and actually position them where we want them to land. So I'm going to do that here for the heading area because this is actually the part that looks least like our actual design. And so this is the part I want to actually focus on and work a little bit more on. So let's open up our editor and jump into our style sheet and make some updates to the heading area. So the header, maybe the first thing that we need to do is just break apart the two sections. So we've got our first one here and then we've got our second one. So maybe the best idea right now is to actually break these apart and present them in different areas within that content. So we always want this section, this first div here, to float to the left because this is going to be the main header area, and also we want to maybe align the text center. So we're going to use the same trick that we used down here when we split off our primary and secondary sections. Instead, we're going to make sure that we update our header area here. So let's take a look at our code and how we're identifying this one. So we've got the header, we've got a div, so we don't have a named div. So maybe it's better if we update this and add in a name. So maybe I can add in something like logo or company name or something like that we could identify this section with. And also we want to identify our nav. So maybe even the best idea here is to give header an ID of header and then identify them in that way. So now we know that we're working with header and we've only got one div within there. And sometimes you want to be really careful with the identifying of elements because if you add in some more divs, then you're going to apply this style to that div as well. So be careful with the way that you're actually presenting your CSS and you're doing your selection. But because I've only got that one div in there, I can get away with just doing header div as well. And then I can also just get away with doing header nav, because this is my nav that's within my main top area. So we're going to use that same format that we did up here where we can pull things to the left, pull things to the right as needed. So we need to, first thing that we needed to do was actually specify their available width. And remember again, we're down here in the media query because I want to take up maybe the full available space when we resize and we reshrink it. And what this is going to do is this is actually going to move that menu navigation back to the position over here. So whenever we shrink it down, we're going to have our navigation area, we're going to have our company information and our logo. But when we have more real estate, we've got a lot of white space over here, and this is why we want to pull that navigation over to that right hand side. So let's give it a width and just quickly eyeball it and say that your width, maybe we can do 50%, or we can do a 45% for the div. And I'm not sure, maybe we can add in a color there as well, or maybe we can just leave it without the color because we do have that styling there. And this one is going to be float. So which side is this going to float on? This is going to float on the left, and then the navigation is, we'll keep this one at 45 as well. So notice that we don't need to do it the full 100% if we want to have some spacing in between there. So let's refresh this. So I just had to resave there, and now when we refresh it, we see we've got our logo here on the left hand side, our navigation on the right hand side, and when we resize it, we see that it really falls into place. And on mobile, this is what we want to do. We want to take up as much of our available real estate as possible, and the only thing that right now that we need to update as well is going to be this navigation menu, because we don't want to present it vertically, we want to present it horizontally, so it takes up less real estate. And this is also the case for whenever it's on a large screen, that we want it to be presented horizontally instead of this list type fashion. So we're going to take care of that in the upcoming lesson.